Hello everyone, the Hindu analysis for 4/9/2018. The first news item, the press meet on activist arrest question. So this is basically with respect to the petition which was being filed by Mr. Satish. So he was seeking for the transfer of the Bhima Koregaon case from the Pune police to the NIA, National Investigation Agency. So at the point of time, the Bombay High Court was really surprised to know that the Maharashtra Pune has conducted a press conference on the arrest of the 5 human activists, and it also questioned the Maharashtra police how can these things can be done. So this was like really making a part on with respected to the Elgar Parishad and also instigating the subsequent clashes at the Bhima Koregaon in December the last year. So this was one of the information to what the court got it, and it started questioning on the same. Second, the panel urges plan to save springs. So this is with respect to Niti Ayog, which is constituted a group of experts. This is with respect to dedicating a mission for the salvage as well as revive the spring water systems in the country's Himalayan region, because they are more dependent, and this source of water is for both irrigation as well as for drinking purpose. So here the Indian Himalayan region are heavily reliant on these natural groundwater sources, and the threat has been increasing from the urbanization which has been caused by the constant push for development as well as for climate change. So here almost half of the perennial springs that have already got dried up, and this also is becoming seasonal, and tens of thousands of villages are currently facing acute water shortage for drinking as well as for the domestic purposes. And here we also have the percentage is that 60% of the low discharge springs that provided water to small inhabitants in the Himalayan region have reported clear decline during the last couple of decades. So here there are more than half a dozen districts of Himachal Pradesh and also the Shimla which are facing the severe water crisis right now, and here the major water sources either went fully or partially dry. So as per the springs, so right now it's getting dried up, and Meghalaya with 3,810 villages with springs. Sikkim had the greatest density with 94% of its villages having a spring, while and Himalayas and the Jammu and Kashmir had both the highest number of villages with the springs at 3,313 and the greatest density of 50.6%. Right now the task force is moving for an 8-year program to overhaul the spring water management. Basically the water management would be taken on. So this includes like they have to prepare the digital atlas of the country's spring sheds, and also training the para hydrogeologist who would lead the grassroots conservation, and also the introduction of a spring health card. So these are the measures to what the task force will be moving on. So this is about it, the situations of the water with respect to the respected Himalayan region states. The next one, talks on for logistic deal with Russia. So this with respect to India and Russia are in a process of concluding the logistic agreement. So this is on the both sides have come for the conclusion, and by the annual summit in December, before that they'll come up with that. And here the proposed agreement to whatever India is being done was first signed with USA. So it is a draft logistic agreement has come up from Russia as well. So now agreement with Russia will be on the lines of those which has been drawn from USA and France. And here the idea is to increase the operational flexibility, and we thought we should do one with our own long-term partner Russia's. Since India has already made the agreement with USA, here India thought that we need to enhance it more with a long-term partner who is called as Russia. And here the India and USA, they come up with an signature last year, that is in 2016, under the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Understanding. So this was almost after a decade of negotiations that have come up in the year 2016. Since then, the other agreements to what India has been signed is from France, Oman, Philippines, Singapore, and for access to Sabang port in Indonesia. So here Australia also is looking out to send a draft agreement for the same. And this logistic agreements are administrative arrangements which is actually facilitating for all the military facilities for exchange of fuel as well as the provisions on mutual agreement. So which is simplifying the logistics support as well as increasing the operational turnaround of the military when operating away from India. So this is like a logistic agreements to what the two countries have been signing right now, and India and Russia have been a deep-rooted military cooperation for several decades. So here you have the information to what has been same as a statement out here. So right now it's going to get concluded with Russia as well. So this is about it. The next one, PSU refiners to use Iranian tankers for oil imports. So this is India will right now allow the public sector refiners to import the Iranian oil with Tehran, arranging the tankers as well as insurance after the firms, where they are including the top shipper Shipping Corporation of India, which has halted the voyage from the due to US. So this is basically where the PSU refiners will start using their Iranian tankers for oil imports. The next one, Z offers 60 billion aid to Africa. This is the China has actually pledged that it is offering 60 billion fund to bolster the industries, also to counter the hunger and enhance the security in Africa. So this is chronically helping them to come up with respect to Parisian terrorism as well. So this announcement was in the address of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, where the president of China, he was, to an authoritative in a message, he had told that the locomotive to Africa's all-round progress. So now, right now, the China has become the Africa's most important and unrivaled economic partner. So there's no rivalry between the two countries as of now. And across trade, investment, infrastructure, financing and aid, no other country has such depth and breadth of engagement in Africa. So here the China's intent is to set up an additional economic and also trade cooperation zones to promote the industrialization in Africa. This is another move to what the China has been intended to do, and also use of the local currency settlements instead of hard currency. So this such as like US dollar would be encouraging to settle the transaction. So it is like moving more towards the local currency settlements that rather than the hard currencies. And also a debt trap diplomacy. This is like financing where the China is telling that it can nudge up the countries to use the new multilateral lenders. For example, we have the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and NDB, that is a new development bank for emerging economies, as well as the Silk Road Fund marshaled by China. So here the president also stressed that 60 billion would be offered, in 15 billion would be for dispersing for aid, interest-free loans and concessional loans as well. And 20 billion credit line would be established, while the 10 billion would be channeled into a special fund for China-Africa development. And this 5 billion would be for a special fund which will also be set up for the African imports. So these are the usage of the, so China would also support Africa's to achieve the general food security by 2030. As we know, this is the sustainable development goals, where the China has been supporting Africa to have a proper achievement when it comes to general food security, and also focusing on energy, transport, telecommunications, tapping cross-border water resource would be on China's radar in the next phase of Africa's infrastructural forays. So this would be the next line to what the China would be focusing on, and unlike openly flagged Beijing's intent to bolster the African security. So it is also intending to look more when it comes to the African security, and this is also looking out for a peace and security fund in partnership with Africa, so that it is also helping the countries, especially in the region of Sahel and also the other borderings where the piracy, Ridden, Gulf of Aden and also the Gulf of Guinea, which is in a high piracy rate right now, and they're almost looking out to be having a 50 China-Africa Security Assistance Program, that is a flagship of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And here he also flagged a China-Africa's Green Envoys Program. So this is like Africa's capacity, muscle capacity for environmental management, pollution prevention, and also the control as well as for green development. So these are the main focuses, and apart from that, China and Africa Environmental Cooperation Center will be set up where the research on environmental issues will be conducted. So they're going to come up with an environmental corporations as well. So apart from that, the president of China also announced that he will be training around 1,000 high caliber Africans, provide 50,000 government scholarship, sponsors seminars and also workshops that would benefit around 50,000 Africans, and invite 2,000 African youth to visit China for exchanges. So these were the important outcomes when it comes to China and Africa. So apart from the aid to what the China has been offering to Africa. The next one, Myanmar court jails reporters for 7 years. So this is with respect to the Myanmar judge. So they have actually sentenced the journalist who has been guilty of breaching a law on state secrets and jailed them for 7 years. So this with respect to the South Asian countries, democracies. So here we have the colonial era where they had a practice of Official Secrets Act, where they have collected and obtained a confidential documents. So the defendants have breached the Official Secrets Act section 3.1c and are sentenced to 7 years. So this with respect to though they were having pressure from the government of the Nobel laureate. Sansuki over a security crackdown sparked by the attacks by the insurgents. This is with respect to Rakhine state, which is in Myanmar, in August 2017. So these reporters were actually investigating the killing by the security forces of Rohingya villagers at the time of their arrest, and they also pleaded they had not been guilty about it, and there was one of the eminents talking that we will not wait while suffer this injustice and will evaluate how to proceed in the coming days, so including whether to seek relief in the international forum. So whatever the sentence is being given to the two reporters by the Myanmar court, so some of the dignitaries were making the statements that it is being completely injustice, but and we will be also seeking a relief if it is needed even in the international forum. The next one, no construction sans solid waste management policy. So this with respect to the Supreme Court feeling it more to be a pathetic situation. So even after the states from the past 2 years, so see here the policy they had asked to do it 2 years back, but still the states have not come up with any of the policies to based on the other part, so that is based on the solid waste management policies. So here the court has ordered the construction activities have to be stopped in some states and UTs that remained unmindful even after telling that they have to come up with a clean environment. So here they had also imposed the fines on some particular states and union territories of Chandigarh for not placing and record their respective policies under the Solid Waste Management Rule 2016. So here Andhra Pradesh was also ordered to pay 5 lakh and Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Chandigarh were imposed a cost around 3 lakh each. So this particular amount to whatever is being given as a penalty would be moving on to the Supreme Court Legal Service Committee within 2 weeks, and there that would be used for the juvenile justice issues. So this is about it. So whichever the state which has not come up with a policy for the solid waste management, so that particular states would be imposed with a penalty, and at the same time they are not been allowed to do up with the further sanctions for constructions. The next one, SEBI Know Your Customer circular could impact stocks rupee AMRI. So this with respect to the Indian stock market. So right now which has been in a tumble, as well as the rupee may fall further ahead of the elections which is going to come in the year 2019 if the contentious KYC circular which has been issued by SEBI is not scrapped soon. So this might influential the foreign funds managed by the persons and institutions of Indian origins which has been warned by. So we have the AMRI, which stands for Asset Managers Roundtable of India. So here this is talking about the April 10 to what the SEBI has issued a circular with respect to the KYC norms for the FPS, foreign portfolio investors, where they're asking, where this particular circular is putting a blanket ban on all the investments through the funds managed by the overseas, that is OCI, PIOs and NRIs, and even regulated the domestic institutions. So here apart from that, the SEBI is also given a deadline to such funds, or about 75 billion of investments in Indian market out of the total estimated foreign portfolio investments of $450 billion. So out of this 450 billion, what the inflows to what we would be getting is around like 75 billion. So here this might be taking a complete outflow if the circular is being taken a complete setup. So they are trying to scrap this at the earliest. And here the AMRI, that's a Asset Managers Roundtable of India, is looking out for an existential crisis for several India's folks funds, because when SEBI made a circular, it said that they are not having a clarity. In sense, AMRI is not, so they are still not having a clarity for the term existential crisis. So they're just looking on to get a clarity on to this so that further things can be done. And the next one, Reserve Bank tightens the ombudsman scheme. So this with respect to the RBI has tightened the banking ombudsman scheme with objective to strengthen the grievances toward the redressal mechanism is for the customers. So here they're saying that any commercial bank which is having 10 or more banking outlets, they have to come up with an independent internal ombudsman so that they can review the customers' complaints at the same time, partially or fully, which can be rejected by the banks. So these instructions are not applicable for the RRBs, such as regional rural banks, which has been sponsored by the commercial banks. They would not be under the ambit of ombudsman scheme. And apart from that, the banks are also internally exculpating the complaints, and they are not fully redressed through their respective internal ombudsmans before convening the final decision. And they are saying that the customers need not to approach the IO directly till there is an RBI instruction. So what is the RBI has been saying on it? And according to the bankers, the internal ombudsman scheme of 2018, which is mandates the banks to grant a fixed term to 3 years to 5 years, and this will not be renewed to the IO, that is internal ombudsman, and this can be removed only with prior approval from the RBI. So the remuneration would have to be decided by the customer subcommittee of the board. So the remuneration of these particular people can be decided only by the customer subcommittee of the board. So based on that, the other movements would be taken on. The next one, drug resistant superbug spreading in hospital study. So this was one of the superbug resistance to all the known antibiotics that can be severe, as well as it can also become a death, which is spreading and undetected through the hospital wards across the world. So here one of the researchers from the University of Melbourne, they have discovered that there are 3 variants of the multi-drug resistant bug, which is taking a sample from 10 countries, and they are also including strains in Europe that cannot be tamed by any drug currently on the market, to whatever the problems or the severity of infections and leading to the death. So these particular strains or to the bugs or the resistant to what is been happening with the current medicines, they are not, the drugs, they are not currently being able to act as an antibiotic, or they are not creating a resistance based on that. So this is like completely none of the drugs have been working in the market, and there is an important bacteria known as Staphylococcus. This is the one which is better known and more deadly, MRSA superbug. So this is basically you can find it on the human skin, and mostly commonly which are infecting those elderly patients where they have implanted such as the catheters or a joint replacement. So any person who has been having with a joint replacement, this sort of an bacteria, there is a chances which can get thrived on the human skin, and that might become even severe infections and also lead to death. So here another Australian study which was published last month, they suggested that some hospital superbugs are growing increasingly tolerant even against the alcohol based disinfectants found in hand washes and also the sanitizers used on the hospital wards. So they are becoming more stronger to whatever the other agency we are trying to use it to avoid the bacteria. So this is about it. The next one, UAE to send 2 astronauts to space. So here the UAE has selected its first 2 astronauts to go to the mission to the International Space Station, and they have been named as Hazza Al Manzouri, 34 years, and 37-year-old Sultan Al Niadi. So here they are putting up with future Emirate generations, and this is becoming the first Arab country to send an unmanned probe to orbit Mars by 2021, naming it as an Hope. So it's called as an Hope, and here they're having a program worth of 20 billion dirhams, which is almost like $5.4 billion. So this is the cost of this particular program. So this is about it. And question for the day, what is ombudsman? That is for 30 words, and you have to locate the adjoining countries of Myanmar. So these were the important news items for 4/9/2018. Thank you.